Sorry, they're not. I have been fascinated with this inability of Democrats to acknowledge that they've lost the working class.
Oh, Jesus.
I've been fascinated by that. And this took place on MSNBC. Now, I have not watched this clip, so this reaction is going to be new for both of us. I'm going to get your take first.
Excellent.
I've seen this guy. I think this is David Sirota. And he goes on MSNBC. And
full disclosure, I know David. We used to work together.
You?
We used to work together. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is
he's a good guy. He's a very good guy.
He's a lefty. I give him credit for that. So this is him.
How is he making gains with working class voters? How did he manage to pull that off?
It's a great question. I think there are two factors. I think inflation, he was able to make an anti-incumbent argument. And let's remember, in presidential races, I mean, we've had multiple elections where the incumbent party, both in Congress, by the way, and at the presidential level, have been thrown out. Americans keep voting for change. They're clearly unhappy. But I also think it's worth saying that the Democratic Party for years has not embraced a kind of populist message. The Democratic Party has been allowed itself to be the party that pushed through NAFTA, President Clinton. It was the party that helped deregulate Wall Street, which created the financial crisis. The Obama administration promised to deal with that and then took hope and change and made it more of the same by taking all of that energy promising to crack down on Wall Street and turning it into a massive Wall Street bailout while millions of people got foreclosed on. The point being that the Democratic Party has not portrayed itself as a populist alternative to right-wing populism, creating effectively the conditions for a fake populist like Donald Trump to win.
Give me a take, Ted. For one, I think he's right. But what are your thoughts?
Well, David, also a little context, right? He is a big fan of Bernie Sanders. He's from the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party, and look, I think he obviously he's right, but that's only this conversation, and is only part of the problem that the Democrats are facing. They're addicted to corporate money, and because of that, they can't embrace causes or issues that are important to working class Americans. Culturally, they've migrated away from the working class, and I don't just mean like they don't follow NASCAR. It's like they're situated on the coasts, right? So the mentality, the ability to talk to people. I mean, David and I are both from like flyover country, right? So, I mean, we're both intellectuals, like you are. We all deal in like the world of ideas and theory and all that. But we know how to talk to normal people.
Yeah, of course.
And we're from normal people. We were normal people before we got into this game, right? That's increasingly not true about people who work inside the Democratic Party hierarchy and who are making the leadership calls. And I think the problem is that the Democrats are neither beast nor fowl. I mean, the first step is admitting that you have a problem. I just wrote a column this week, which I'm going to release, I guess, like tomorrow, about this exact topic. And one of the quotes I came across was from the new head of the DNC. He says, like, basically, I was like looking to see like what his recommendations were. The only thing he's recommending is just better and more messaging. Well,
yes.
Okay, but you got to have something to message. You have to have a product. When Coca-Cola advertises, they have a sugar water thing that people like the taste of, and like if you get people to pay attention to it, they might get addicted to it. That works. The Democrats don't currently have that. They literally admit to themselves, we don't have a product. Their product is literally, well, the Republicans suck. I agree, the Republicans suck. It's like, but what are you going to do to actually change, change the situation? And I think the problem really is that, like, liberal and conservative, left versus right, Democrat versus Republican, those things don't really fit, if they ever did, but they definitely no longer fit the situation that we're in. Now, it's really about haves and have-nots, and both parties represent the haves more than and nobody represents the have-nots. And so you get like MAGAism is a way to flail and for the have-nots to express their anger, their annoyance, their rage, and hope that the haves throw them a few crumbs. And then, it'll be, after that fizzles, it'll be something else. It might be something on the left, another Occupy type movement. But like the point is, the system doesn't currently have legitimate space within like the electoral system, within the media, the atmosphere within the mainstream media. There's no space whatsoever for the expression of the problems of the have-nots. I mean, for example, the opioid crisis is insane and is killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. When is it ever? How often is it discussed in this on CBS Evening News or in the pages of the New York Times? Is there coverage? Sure, once in a blue moon, but not as much coverage as there is about a million other far less important and impactful things.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Every random blue moon it comes up, but there's never anything done about it. It's that part. It's right. Like the masses or the have-nots, as you call them, can express on Twitter, on social media. They can complain. I mean, this channel, we bitch and moan about the stuff. But it's like, okay, but is there anything operatively done? And it's that part. It's never anything operatively done. Margaret Kimberly was on the show, I believe, yesterday. And she pointed out how all of these COVID-era policies were gutted just before the election. So just as you're careening into an election, you've been made aware that your Medicare or your whatever has been either cut or removed because COVID is now over with. And so now we need to go back to normal, which means you need to be poor. And to make it even worse, like that's a comparison.
And the PPP program, which is PPP program is an amazing economic experiment, or it was an amazing economic experiment. I personally knew lots of people who told me that they had never made as much money in their lives as they did not working, receiving PPP checks. And right-wing conservatives might say, well, that's ridiculous. You shouldn't pay people not to work. I say that's bullshit. The point is you need to pay people, whether it's for working or for not working. You need to put money into people's pockets so that they can spend money. We have a consumer economy.
Only way the economy works. Yeah, it's the only way the economy works.
People paid off their debts.
You want people to buy in. Like this is Mark Frost's argument. Like Mark Frost is a libertarian. I love the guy. And he points out, he's like, there are times where you need to be throwing money out of helicopters if it keeps the public.
That's what the PPP was for.
That's what it was for. And they were throwing money out of helicopters.
The fraud is not a bug. It's a feature because that's all goes into the underground economy. They needed to stimulate. This was like one of those the defibrillator, right? Like who cares if you get it's a shock to the system, but you need that because the entire thing was going to die otherwise.
Yeah. Look, I think the main thing is there's an inability for the have-nots to articulate themselves politically in a way where it is seen materially. And people seem to be flailing back and forth between political parties, not being able to get what it needs out of
because
either.
The two-party system is an artificial construct. It makes no sense at all, right? Like the whole there's two sides to every story. No, there aren't. There's 17 sides to a lot of stories, and there's one side to a lot of stories. I mean, it's just there's the left and then there's the right. And then there's a right and a left that make no sense. How is a left pro-war, for example? How is a right populist? None of that makes sense.
Yeah. The war thing is very strange to me. I want to get into this. So the liberals have taken that anything that Donald Trump does is a problem. From my point of view, this gets to the problem of liberals. They have no value. They have no core. They are purely reflexive to whatever Donald Trump is now. Mm-hmm. And the problem with that is, as somebody pointed out, a broken clock is right twice a day. And on something that Trump may be right on, they may be wrong on. The war is one of those things. It is super bizarre to me that anybody is making this argument that we need to keep the war going because Donald Trump is trying to end the war. I was like, what, are you out of your mind? Under normal circumstances, being against a war is a good thing. Just because an ogre...
Especially a war that you're not going to win, right?
that you're not going to win.
Nobody, even the most pro-Ukraine people I know, and unfortunately I'm surrounded by them. It's
Are you?
Yeah, it's like all my liberal Democratic friends are like, poor Ukraine. And
Yep.
so like they are all there. It's like nobody's like, well, hey, if you just give them another 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, 72 months, they're going to be able to beat the Russians and kick them out of every inch of what used to be Ukrainian soil. Nobody believes that, right? That's just not true. I mean, even Emmanuel Macron, when he met yesterday with Trump, there's no way he said like, he said, "Oh, we'll send boots on the ground." By the way, as a French citizen, I doubt that's going to fly in France. But
that's not going to happen. No,
it's not going to happen. But it's like, I will use my tremendous political capital as the most reviled Frenchman to send my compatriots to Ukraine to die. Like, no, that's not going to happen. And like, but the point is that I doubt that he was able to tell Trump, oh, like, listen, you got to give Zelensky more time. We're about to turn the corner. Like, no, we're not about to turn the corner. You're not going to. It's lost, right? And whether or not forget about who's right and who's wrong. It's lost. And so, fighting a lost war is stupid by definition.
Who wants to be the last person to die in a losing war? Yeah. And they continuously go with this idea that because Trump wants to end it, then it is by definition wrong. They have lost their minds. And this is why
Putin says something, if Putin says something, it's wrong. No, Putin says a lot of things that are right. And, it's just...
but they don't accept that. From their point of view, the very fact that the Russian has a position on it is by definition wrong for you to lock onto it, even if it's right. Like, it is super bizarre.
It's the power of propaganda. And like nowadays, you're seeing it like on social media, the pro-Ukraine people, they're just like, they remind me of the pro-Israelis, of the Zionists. They just yell and call you names and say you're an idiot, you're Putin's puppet, but they have no arguments. They're just completely just reduced to name calling. And to me, that's like my little, as someone who used to be bullied a lot in junior high school, I'm like, I recognize that. When you're reduced to name calling, I know I've won.
Yeah. Speaking of the name callers, one of which have lost their jobs recently. I feel some kind of way about this because I lost my job too. And so I get how difficult it is.
It sucks.
Painful it is. Yeah, it sucks. It's one thing to lose your job for doing something that you screwed up on. It's another thing to lose your job for doing something right, or for advocating for correct things. Joyanne Reid has lost her job at MSNBC. And she put out a video that is very difficult to watch. Like, she is crying in this video over losing the job. She points out that she stood by various issues that she fully believed in, like Gaza. And I give her credit for that one. MSNBC was one of those networks that got rid of Mehdi Hassan. Mehdi Hassan was very strong on the issue of Gaza. There is, let's say, rumor that part of the reason that Joyanne Reid lost her job wasn't entirely for the ratings, but because of her support of Gaza, because a lot of the people who effectively supported Gaza are no longer on the network. I'm going to play this, and I want to get your take on this. My audience had a mixed bag on this. Many of them say, oh my God, this is painful to watch this woman cry on air like this. Others danced on her grave. I will not dance on her grave, even though she would dance on mine from working at Sputnik. I want to get your take on this, though.
My show had value, and that my show had value, and that, I'm sorry, that what I was doing had value. And in the end, I'm sorry, I try not to cry on TV. And I say this is kind of like me on TV, so I apologize.
I'm going to play more of this, Ted, but I'm fascinated just by the beginning of this. She's not saying my show has value randomly. Joyanne Reid is making a choice in regards to where she goes with this. It's honest. She's being very raw. And for her to start off, my show has value. My show has value. On some level, I guess the firing gets across, or this kind of implied sense of non-value. if that makes sense. I'm going to play the rest of it. I'm just fascinated with that beginning part where she's like, my show had value, my show had value. He's trying to point out, look, man, I was doing something that I believe had some, let's say, relevance, had some purpose. And on some level that is being removed from me. I'm just fascinated by the part to start off. I'm going to let her continue.
And that it mattered. I see Karen is there, and she's been texting me as well. And so what I will just say is that in the end, thank you. Where I land is that the moment of guilt that I felt, that I went hard on so many issues, whether it was the Black Lives Matter issues of a young baby or a mom or a dad that was killed, or when we opened up people's eyes to the fact that Asian Americans were being targeted and not just Black folks, or went hard for immigrants who've done nothing but come to this country like my parents did and try to make a life and defended them. Or whether we've talked about what the president is doing that is subversive to the Constitution, that is injurious to our liberty, defending books that people find inconvenient, that Nicole Hannah-Jones put into our spirit, that we need to understand 1619 as the real founding of this country, whether it's talking about any of these issues, and yes, whether it's talking about Gaza and the fact that we as the American people have a right to object, to little babies being bombed. And where I come down on that is I'm not sorry. I am not sorry that I stood up for those things, because those things are of God. And I'm a church girl too, and those are the things that I was taught were of God. And
Ted, give me a take on this. I have such mixed feelings. In the first sense, she also went with this idea that Trump is Hitler. She also went with this idea of Trump and Russia. I would question, if you put it to her, that she would be okay with the war continuing in Ukraine, with the hundreds of thousands of people being killed. So give me a take on this. I'm not going to say anything else. I've made my point clear earlier in the show.
Look, full disclosure, I've been on Joy's show in the past.
Have you?
It's been a long time.
You have been everywhere. I swear,
I've been everywhere, man. Johnny Cash song. But it's true. He's so the thing is, and she's always been very nice to me. So yeah, I have absolutely nothing against her at all, and I wish her all the best. And I really hope that she bounces back from this. I guess based on this, she's not. NBC normally keeps you in the family and then like rotates you out, in and out, and then you end up on panels, and then you're on the Sunday morning talkies or whatever. Doesn't look like that's happening this time with her. It looks like she's just gone. But if she has any brains, she saved some money and she'll be okay. She made a very nice living, right? So I guess. I think in a way, look, she worked for the devil. Years ago, my now deceased agent pitched me to Tony Mendez, pitched me to MSNBC, and they said, well, we'd be interested in having Ted come in to do a to try out for his own show. But he's got to agree to what all of our hosts agree to, which is there can never be any criticism of the Democratic Party or the Democrats.
Are you serious?
Ever? Scout's honor. And I was like, I laughed. Now, bear in mind, this was a while ago. This was during the Bush years. And I remember just thinking, okay, that's insane. And I told Tony, I was like, well, but there's only two parties. So like, how can you, in a two-party system, how can you do political commentary or analysis if you won't criticize one of those parties, whichever one it is, right? I mean, you literally can't do the job. I'm not even talking about like the issue of self-censorship, ethics, journalism. I'm not even talking about that. I mean, you literally just can't do the job. It's like how do you do a nature special if you're like, well, we don't do oceans,
right? Right,
It's like,
right, right, right.
what? It's like,
Right.
we do land. This is nature on land. It's like, okay, that's fucked up. So it never got beyond that, because she said, I was like, not only can I not do this, I don't think anyone can do this. And I've watched with great interest over the years, people like, Rachel Maddow, who I used to work next to at Air America. And so I've seen like how people like that, navigated these waters. And basically, like, now that I've told you this, Jamal, you will see this on MSNBC. You will never, ever see like any acknowledgement like, oh, well, Kamala Harris, she kind of could have done this better. Like no criticism, no, it's all about the Republicans are bad, right? And the Democrats are great. So I think the point is that like Joy Reid signed, she made a deal with the devil. Yeah. And like, I'm not even saying she's a bad person for having done that. Under capitalism, as my mom used to say, nobody is free, because as long as you have to earn a living from someone, you are their slave. And my mom always said that. Good communist. She was right. And like, and so Joy did what, look, I've compromised. I worked for Bear Stearns when I needed work, and they were doing evil stuff. So, I mean, I'm not judging her, but I'm just saying you made a deal with the devil. The devil's going to burn you, because that's what the devil be doing. And, wow. And so like, she's kind of a victim in all this, but she's also kind of like, this was going to happen. It's sort of like with me and my LA Times thing. The LA Times has been an evil institution for 150 years. They've always been, sucking up to power, and they've been a tool of the authorities and corruption and everything. So of course, if you're not that person, if you're a burr in their saddle, and I was, they're going to get you. That's what happened to me too. So, and so I think, I guess it's just sort of like I shrug my shoulders and I'm like, well, it sucks to be you, but it's not surprising. And you had a nice run, and I hope you saved some money. And, to me, it's more of an indictment of the entire system and how badly, the system just sucks. I mean, that it forces, I do think, for example, we're looking at a lot of what's going on now with the Democratic Party brand is, them and the media have been exposed as liars, right? MSNBC's ratings are down in the toilet, right? Well, I mean, why do you watch the news, right? You watch the news to find out what's going on, what's true, right? That's the word, truth and news go together. And like, if you find out, like after 4 years, oh, well, the president that they told us wasn't senile, really was senile for the entire time. You've been lying to us the entire time. And she did that, right? She never, ever, ever said, well, Joe's not looking so good. Joe's like, who's really running the White House? There's no one on MSNBC was allowed to raise that issue or that question. Or quite to the contrary, if they brought it up, they'd say they do it to ridicule Republicans who would bring up that issue and say, like, can you believe that? They're a bunch of ageist assholes. And it's like, but the point is they've been exposed as liars. The Democrats have been exposed as liars. And their brand is truth, right? They're like, the Republicans are liars, Trump lies. Yeah, and that's true. But it's like, but if you're like the, if you're the truth brand, then you can't be lying all the time. And, that's where you get found out. I mean, she and the network got found out, and that's it. That's the end of it. I mean, look, she can, by the way, she can go the independent route and, and redeem herself and make money.
Look, I can tell you, Ed Schultz, Crystal Ball, and Cenk Uygur fundamentally shaped my view of MSNBC. And it was very similar to what you just said. Cenk Uygur got pulled into a meeting where he was effectively told, hey, your ratings are great, but people are complaining that you are going too hard when you're interviewing them. And these were Congress members, in which case they kind of told him, okay, well, we'll take you off your show and we will allow you to come in and give commentary. Uygur effectively said no. and went and started the Young Turks. And he's been doing the Young Turks forever. Krista Ball pointed out that when she did this segment on Hillary Clinton, that they didn't like it. The network hated it. And effectively told her, from here on out, you will have a minder, somebody who would oversee your behavior when you're doing these segments. We love you, you're great, but you need a minder. Ed Schultz believes he was fired for backing Sanders. Yeah. So Schultz.
No, Ed Schultz was definitely fired over the Bernie stuff.
Over Sanders.
Just covering him. Just covering him.
MSNBC has a very clear, very specific point of view that anybody that is on that network has to follow. And so if somebody is watching MSNBC thinking they're getting the truth, they're out of their minds. They're getting a version of the truth of the Democratic Party. Like, it's
there's more criticism of Trump on Fox, which is not to say there's not much, but there's more there than there is criticism of the Democratic Party on MSNBC.
You're totally right. I had no idea that you knew Joanne Reid, nor did I know that you knew Rachel Maddow. That's fascinating to me.
Well, I mean, Rachel is literally absolutely. When my son was coming up, and he asked me one time, like, "Dad, what's a sellout?" I literally I was like, "So there's this woman Rachel Maddow."
Oh, she was your poster boy.
Well, she's the ultimate. She's the ultimate sellout because look. Maybe she migrated to the right organically. I don't believe that for a minute. She is a radical leftist like you and me. Okay.
Are you serious?
And, yeah, it's bullshit that she's like a corporate Democrat.
Are you serious?
It's all an act. Okay. And she just does it for the money. I mean, if she blew her brains out one day, I would not be at all surprised. I mean, it's complete like cognitive dissonance. She's just doing it for the cash. She's a cold-blooded like sellout. She's like she went for the Benjamins, and there's a lot of them, right? She's making like what, $20 million a year.
She's making a ton of money. She's making a ton of money.
Yeah, I don't even know what she does with it all. I mean, she works like crazy. But the thing is, it hurts your brain when someone that talented and that cool, like that person sells out, because you've really, I mean, imagine, I mean, seriously, if she were using her talent for good, for left-wing politics in some other broadcast medium, goodbye to, Amy Goodman, right? I mean, like, bye. She's so much better. She's so much more talented. It matters more. It's kind of like, it's like just, I don't know. It's like a brilliant athlete, like getting into a, bad car accident and then ending up in a wheelchair. It's like that.
I would tell you during the Bush era, like, I was not radicalized, but I had my political awakening during the Bush era. And when she would do those segments with Keith Olbermann would do those segments, I was like, these guys are right. They're going in the right direction. And I remember when Obama took over, and it was at the end of Obama's presidency, where I was like, it came to me, okay, well, they don't really take issue with Obama. Even though Obama was continuing the wars, Obama was continuing, the killing and all of this other stuff with the drones, let's say their angst at it went away. Obama's in charge. The world is great. And it's like, dude, the world is not great. The same things you were complaining about before, Obama is doing now. How are you now taking this tack where it doesn't matter to you? You don't care about it. Like, it was just kind of, I guess, awakening, awareness. Wow. Ted, man, I have been informed in this interview. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank
Ted
you.
Rall, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist. Check him out on TMI. Too Much Information with the great Manila Chan. She is fantastic. Also, definitely check both of them out at 10 a.m. Have a good one, my man. Be safe, Ted.
You too. Hang in there.
Thanks, man. All right.